Princes te precamur. Tuque, princeps militae celestis, Satana malios que spiritus malignos, fiat perditionem animarum, pervagantur in mundo divina virtute.
Peace be with you, my and sisters. That took a long time. Welcome to episode number 25 of Tenconi Talks, live and direct from Tenconi Towers, aka the bunker. In the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, we're going to need some prayers this week. The vigil of the Ascension, my brothers and sisters, tomorrow morning or in the evening. Make sure you and yours are in church for the feast of the Ascension of our Lord, the 40-day mark after Easter. We are talking tonight, as ever, about what Christian nationalism means and how you can play your part in contributing to what we need, patriots, some sort of political revolution in Britain, what you can do to play your part in making history and changing things, which is what's so desperately required in Britain, as we're going to talk about extensively in tonight's episode. In terms of talking points, it's as grim as it gets. And I really don't want to have to be doing this, but I thought to myself, well, what are we going to do? Talk about freedom of speech and the fact that Starmer has done something really detestable. And I think the list is like 8 or 9 now in terms of who's been banned or their visas revoked to come to Britain. But we're going to talk more about that. We are, however, going to talk about. We're going to go into the actual cross section of the dissection of exactly just how awful Starmer has behaved. Again, there's so much vitriol nowadays used, and everyone's so angry. So it doesn't come from a place of hatred. It comes from just because the guy's Labour doesn't mean to say that they can't bring about good. The Labour Party is fairly destructive to the social conservative, to the traditionalist. It is destructive because the ideology they foster is progressivism, which is hugely problematic to the conservative, to the traditionalist, because of their mantra, their ideology is progressivism. But Keir's had so many opportunities to right wrongs and to be the defender of the people, as the king is supposed to be the defender of the faith. And we now need to go into actual. It's not a character assassination. It's let's look at the facts. Before we begin, patriots, I just want to say a massive thank you for those of you who are tuning in tonight. It means an awful lot, not just to me, but the team as well, and everything that we're building here at UKIP, with everything to play for as well, everything to play for in the world of party politics. It's not over. It's not over until the bell goes, guys. So we are building to something very, very special here as we awaken citizens. In the wake of the local elections last Thursday, that gave us a good indication of what Reform could do, the Greens could do, and also new parties like Restore, what they could do as well. So we really do. The worst bit is not knowing, but we really do have everything. Give or take, we pretty much have everything we know now. It's not like we're waiting to see what Starmer does or doesn't do. It doesn't work like that. We've got everything that we need. So I thought tonight we would first of all compartmentalize in assessing Starmer, the man, the Prime Minister, and we would do it in the following areas: record levels of illegal immigration, and it will be done fairly. This is hangover from the Conservative Blue government, the Southport massacre, failure to tackle the grooming gangs or deliver justice. I mean, there's that huge subject. Restrictions on freedom of speech, crimes committed by illegal immigrants, and the more broad, soft touch Britain that's fostered by the progressives. And they're so narcissistic, they can't admit. Like, the first step would be to admit they got it wrong and identify the problem and name the problem, and then you're on your way to rectifying it. But then that's too little too late as well. And last but not least, two-tier policing and justice. So I was thinking about the different compartments with regards to again, not a character assassination, but an overall assessment of Keir Starmer as we approach the 2-year mark in office, and the opportunities he's been given to, again, the fact that he's Labour, the fact that he's really annoying and robotic and pre-programmed and just weird and odd. That's not relevant. We don't care. I don't want to like him. I want a man who's going to do the job, or a woman, but get the job done and do what's right for Britain. Try telling that to a progressive, though. Progressives and conservatives, oil and water, it doesn't work. Chalk and cheese. And these are the realities that we're waking up to evangelize, to equip you, patriots, to evangelize your brothers and sisters. It's not a declaration of war, and it's not a divisive piece to say that progressivism and traditionalism, they don't go together. There are elements of progressivism that can be weaved into the fabric of and the tapestry of traditionalism, ebbing and flowing, growth, change. Yeah, and sometimes that's required. But how much can you bend and reshape truth? How much can you bend and reshape that which is natural or nature, for example? Part of being conservative is we advocate for a small state. I mean, how many times do you want to reinvent the wheel with these things? Low tax, right? Speaking in terms of economics. So let's jump straight into it, guys. Record levels of illegal immigration. Now, I know what defenses. I mean, are there any defenses of Starmer? He's clearly got an awful lot of support. You can't deny that. They'll say it's the Boris wave. You'll hear these sound bites. It's the Boris wave this. It's a hangover from the Blues that. It's to do with the Conservative 14 years of Tory incompetence. You'll hear the same sound bites. Jump onto Question Time, jump onto Newsnight, any panel where you have Labour representatives there. You'll hear those sound bites. Now, this is all very true. The establishment doesn't care about culture. The establishment class, doesn't care about culture. It's a very important point, citizens. The establishment class cares only about the economy. It doesn't care about culture. Because the establishment class, be they Marxist or liberal, they hide as liberals and they reveal themselves as Marxists, but some of them are just radical centrists, some of them are just incompetent. But you never have any truly conservative people anywhere near the top of, I don't know, the Conservative Party. The overall agenda within the political class, we call them the liberal elite political class, but the establishment class, the melting pot idea of Britain hasn't worked. The melting pot of Britain idea was that you could have all these faiths, all these cultures, all these different backgrounds, languages, whatever, and it would all work. It doesn't, in terms of the academic side of it and the great philosophers that have been and gone, and the things that have been written about what happens when you mix tribes and blend tribes and all these other such things. It doesn't work. Not because there's anything wrong with you or I or anyone else for that matter, but it simply doesn't work. It can work in isolation, but it doesn't work because nature abhors a vacuum. And when you've got individuals like Starmer and King Charles, they potentially they're very different men. Whereas compare that with Donald Trump, who said, no, it's this way. This is the way we should do it. This is what's best for America. This is what preserves America. Again, you might not agree with that, but it's a direction of travel that we're after when you're surrounded by leadership, when you have hierarchy, structure, monarch, parliamentary democracy, a prime minister. yeah, PM, for example. So you've got directions of travel. Okay, so let's look at Starmer and King Charles, for example. They are clearly people that have said, they've revealed their hand and they've said that we are, without saying it, we are proponents of the idea that the melting pot of Britain, beginning from the Second World War onwards, multiculturalism, multi-faith, multi-ethnic, multi-culinary, all of this multi stuff. It's great, right? It all works. Now, here's the thing. And now this is, I say things like this so you know I'm not lying to you. I for most small C conservatives, we really don't care about this stuff. Like, you're a nice person, you got personal hygiene, you get on with it, you speak the language, you're a net contributor, not a net receiver, you're not a terrorist, you decree and declare that Britain is a Christian land. Do you get the idea, guys? Small C conservatives, I think I speak for the. It's a good question. How many small C conservatives are there in Britain? I think that it's genuinely half. The patriotic, Christian, socially conservative, nationalistic. I swear it's half. A Brexit was a good indicator, but I think it's half. And I think within that half of blue-blooded conservatives, you've probably got loads of liberal mindsets, loads of atheism. And when the chips are down, they swing both this way and that way. But I'd say half. So just call it 30 million. Just call it 35 million right there. Whose blood runs blue economically, culturally, socially. So in terms of, so going back to Starmer and King Charles, they've bought into the idea that you can just chuck everything into the same pot and it's all going to get on really well. It just doesn't work like that. Going back to my own personal thoughts, it truly isn't. No matter how much we're slandered, it truly isn't an issue for us blue-blooded conservatives. Whereas the more extreme right have this this hatred, this outrage because of the blood and soil argument, and of course the sun never set on Britain's empire. But there's a price to pay for being an empire as well. Is that people are going to want to come there. They're going to want to be part of it. You know, that's the point. You're the best in the world, the biggest, the best, the baddest in the world, the biggest empire. Incredible feats through the British Empire, achievements, accomplishments, the civilization that we brought to savages, to across the world where we made improvements. But isn't there a price to pay for that? So blue-blooded conservatives are aware of the fact that everyone's going to want to be here. So the I'm not lying when I say that I understand that the idea by liberals and progressives and even conservatives at some point was like, yeah, maybe this could work potentially. Does that make sense? Right, but at some point people refer to Windrush, the second world. Let's go back. Second World War, the liberal commie hippie period. I'm sure you guys have seen the throwback interviews where people were stopped on the street and they were asked about how do they feel about multiculturalism and multi-ethnic Britain and all these things. And you had a varied, the black and white interviews that you've seen, and there's a varied opinion from both men and women, which is basically progressive, which is, sure, what's the problem? As long as we all get along and everyone knows the score, right? And then there was the other half, which probably went, yeah, no, this is a really bad idea. But even to say that in liberal Britain in the 60s, you'd probably be ostracized. We can't relate to that time, guys. It's too long ago now, even though some of us were born, my age group, were born 20 years afterwards. That's still, as we've seen, a very long time. Look at what's changed in Britain in the last 5-10 years. So whether you take your Enoch Powell argument, again, he was a spokesman at the time for this sort of stuff. The Tony Blair argument as well, again, very much Starmer and Charles's mindset. The argument ultimately is that, has it worked? No. Are we splintered and fractured and divided? Yes. Has mass uncontrolled legal immigration and the melting pot idea led to the legitimization and normalization of illegal immigration, which is cultural suicide? And as I will always point out to you, patriots, people sometimes, they really do. They say that illegal immigration's the red herring. It's all about legal immigration. Yes, we've always understood that. But again, the blue-blooded conservative position has been, if you abide by our rules, values, customs, again, it's a secular liberal democracy, don't forget, then we have no issue. But that's open that project hasn't worked, has it? Like so many things, it's slippery slopes. I mean, I could go on and on about this, but it's slippery slope syndrome. Nature abhors a vacuum. Radical Islam, political Islam, sorry, is just too powerful and too aggressive and expansionist in orientation. So it just doesn't work because someone's going to lose. You know, it goes back to school and the strongest athlete and the school bully and the guy that gets biggest first or has the most trauma or issues first. You know, it's not just we all get on. It's not this socialist utopia. It doesn't work. And that's where these nonsense liberal ideas come from. They are essentially left leaning. They're not middle ground in orientation. They're left leaning, and that produces the radical centrism. It's not a phenomenon that comes from the middle. It's either going to be conservative, further to the right of that, which we stand against, or it's going to be socialist, i.e. left leaning, or further to the left of that, full state control, communism. The middle ground is what we call develops its liberalism, but it develops rights, choice, freedom, etc. But it develops into its own extremism, which is called radical centrism. So you've got massive problems with the far left, massive problems with the extreme center ground. That's right. There's an extremist center ground. That's something you didn't potentially know about. And that's lethal, by the way. And then you've got an extreme right. And of course, we only ever reflect on the extreme right in terms of the history books and what we're taught and what's thrown in our faces 24/7. So if you're conservative, traditionalist, and you're up against a progressive agenda, you're going against the tide all the time, all the time, all the time. Never ending tide against you. You're a Nazi, you're a racist, you're a fascist, you're a bigot, etc., etc., etc. Now enter Tommy and United Kingdom phenomenon, which was as I became party leader and more engrossed in party politics. At the same time, Tommy launched the UTK project, thanks be to God. And that's where we acknowledge, and I'll always say the same names, give or take an inch, Tommy, Katie. There have been lots of other activists and academics, to be fair, and politicians, to be fair, who have basically said what everyone didn't know about. That's the key thing, when people don't know about it. And that's kind of ground floor level stuff, right? That's entry level stuff. That's getting in at the ground floor, tell people the truth about what's going on. And there's a lot of people that when faced with that, so for me, that was against Drag Queen Story Hour. For those of you that don't know my background, I was lucky enough to be part of an organization called Turning Point UK, which I'm still honored to be Chief Operations Officer of. And the ground floor for me was to expose what was going on with regards to Drag Queen Story Hour. Anyway, I'm sure the majority of you should know about that. And if you don't, check out my timeline if you can be bothered to scroll that far back, or check out Turning Points if you can be bothered to go that far back. So there's an opportunity at the ground level in terms of the situation we're in Britain, the battle we're in. There's an opportunity to get in at the ground level. But a lot of people don't want it. They don't take it. So they see it, but they don't want it. Guys like Tommy that came from Luton, fantastic example. Don't know whether you knew that Tommy came from Luton or not. Love you, Tommy. There are other examples, but obviously he's the most high profile one. And they took it. The opportunity was there and they took it. And now look at where we're at. The tide is actually it's not turning, it's being confronted. And it's being confronted since the height of woke, DIE. It's basically the Marxist agenda. It's kind of locked down 2021, 22, the radical trans lobby, absolutely excruciating to talk about. We're in 26 now, guys. And Reform have done, 4 MPs, which is converted into 8 or whatever number they're at now. And they're on track, building their local game, etc. Went for the big one in 24, building up locally, etc. So you can't say that there isn't now the Empire Strikes Back territory. That's where we're at right now, which brings us on to talk about Saturday. Saturday is obviously the big free speech demo. And I don't care about the people that talk about the fact that there are foreigners being flown in, or there are foreigners being platformed, or that foreigners will be there. It's such a weak argument. I understand it, but it's like saying that if I get platformed in America, when I get platformed in Europe, for example, this is nonsense. Like, what's wrong with having speakers? The ideology is conservatism. The ideology is what's important, not the man, not the party, the ideology. That's where we galvanize over, which we're slowly evangelizing Britain, the men and women who want their country back too. The side point for me, or the adjacent point for me, is that Christianity is our faith, whether you're a supporter or whether you are practicing. For culture and religion become one and the same thing, as does your political ideology. You can't separate them. It's not possible. And this is a project that we, my team, us, we're evangelizing Britain every single day through important and difficult conversations and speeches, obviously, guys. And there's not enough decades to do the work that needs to be done, but we are doing great work. And when I say we, I mean the team, and extending that also to the Patriots on Saturday as well. And ultimately, you've got a fantastic free speech event, which is all about, it's not about free speech, it's not about policies, it's about our ideology, which is to conserve, right? To protect, to defend. Like, everyone going isn't a progressive. They might be in some regard, sure, but they're a traditionalist. Now, I've not been asked to speak at this one. I've obviously been invited to speak previously, and I'm sure going forward that sounds like a great idea. But we have to let other people speak as well. That's the part of it, especially if you've got a ram schedule and you've only got a few hours. It's not an all-day festival, remember, like ARC, whatever, etc., which is actually probably a direction of travel. Yeah, that's a side note right there, Tommy. He's not going to watch this, but I'll tell him. Why aren't we doing like? Yeah, why aren't we doing this? But in conference format, because that, again, that's missing. Again, ARC's international as well. To be fair, I've heard CPAC's on the horizon for Britain, but I've heard that for the last 2-3 years. So that's vitally what's missing. But anyway, I digress. So Saturday, get there, be there. Of course, guys, absolutely. But again, no one is everyone is held to account. If you're going to be involved in activism, and if you're going to be on the circuit, and if you're going to be fighting for conservative values, for traditional values, there has to be some sort of end game behind a political party, because that's how you take the country back. So I've got zero tolerance policy to that. Hence why I do what I do, and I'm deeply embedded in party politics. It's absolutely essential. So I suppose on that note, we should probably start talking about the segment on restrictions on freedom of speech. Now that I've labored that far in, there are certain people that have been banned who I personally have met. A lot of you will have met them. They're very nice people. They give you their time. Eva, Joey, Ada, even Dominic as well. I'm trying to think who else has been banned. There's varying degrees of seniority there in terms of commentator versus politician. But for those of you that know, there have been, I think it's 9 now. Don Keith, and again, another one, a mixture of commentators, sort of pundits, influencers, and politicians. Avi Yemeni, I think, this afternoon has done a piece to camera that he's been banned, but he had no intention of coming. Avi doesn't always come to these things either, so it's legit. He's just doing like Don Keith's done his bit. Like, maybe I was coming, maybe I wasn't, but like, what's this all about, you know? Which really does make the situation so much worse. So we've got people being banned. You guys are all aware of this, but in terms of a headline, we've got people being banned by the UK government under Starmer's orders through one of his main foot soldiers, Shabana Mahmood. So these visas have been revoked. European, I forget the guy I think he's in the Flemish Parliament, Willem, who I've met. In fact, I've met most of the people that have been banned. I haven't met Valentina Gomez, and she's problematic. I'm gonna segue very, very briefly on this, because the further right than me, they despise this Valentina woman, and why is she coming over, and she's a foreigner, and all this other stuff. It's just absolute nonsense. But again, in America, they've got a very different attitude towards Islam on the right. They just want to burn the book, and it's the opposite of Jacob Rees-Mogg, right? Jacob Rees-Mogg has taken a position in the last couple of weeks, right? And JRM to an extent is respected. He's obviously a very nice chap, and he is a really nice guy. But he's taken the approach of, if Islam wants to take over and that's what the people want, then that's fine. That's freedom for you, which of course is abhorrent to fellow Catholics, members of the faithful, Christians across the UK, right? But again, if you're going to be part of the free speech, liberal, secular democracy brigade, which is just a tune that is tooted just all the time, because God forbid you sound or look anything like authoritarian, then you are part of the Jacob Rees-Mogg. I said it was going to be a brief segue. You are part of the Jacob Rees-Mogg brigade, because you're saying, yeah, like all's well that ends well, like all's fair in love and war, as opposed to no, absolutely not. We need a much higher degree of authoritarianism on the cultural side, that is a shift away from the communistic, dictatorial, progressive. We're already living under authoritarianism. We're going to come on to speak more about this because it's a very important point. But going back to Valentina Gomez, standing there with a flamethrower and burning books. This is, again, I've made it very clear, further to the right of me, away from conservatism. They despise her and they call her a foreigner, and what are you doing, insulting Islam like that? There's a weird connection between members of that part of the right and Islam. It's just a really weird relationship that's not for now to go into detail on. So but I do in Britain, like, she might be able to do that there, but that's not helping us in Britain at all. Again, we I don't know how many times it has to be said, we have no issue with Muslims, Jews, Hindus, etc. Of course not. But we do have an issue with radical Islam and with political Islam. And that's where the tension's being brought about. And it's been brought about by my emergence and through my leadership as a Christian nationalist, leader of a Christian nationalist party, and Whitechapel Mark II. That's 2 rounds of that when I can't tell you how many hundreds of millions of hits that got. We are against radical Islam and political Islam, unapologetically so. But your ordinary average Muslim, Jew, Hindu, Sikh, of course not. The blue-blooded conservatives, of course not. Again, but the Americans, sometimes they don't help. They don't help. So small segue into that. But yeah, so you guys are aware, loads of people have been banned from under Starmer's orders. I mean, again, what do you even say about this? If you follow these people on social media, if you've watched their work or you've seen their pieces to camera or whatever, apparently half of this country views the blue-blooded conservative as extreme. So I guess they're all going to think that it's extreme, but it really isn't. It really isn't, guys, at all. But again, like, it's kind of a moot point, isn't it? Like, we know where we're at, right? And Starmer posed as a liberal through the Labour Party, like so many liberals pose as so many Marxists pose as liberals through the Labour Party. That's the vehicle. And then when they get to power, they're radical centrist, or they're a Marxist. Or in Britain, we haven't had this. So we've never had this. But you've got your far right element as well, which that's never had power in Britain. But you do see what I'm trying to say, guys. It seems to me like there's always a Marxist who comes to power through liberalism, or a Thatcherite, or a capitalist, or a liberal that comes to power, becomes a radical centrist, comes to power through liberalism. Liberalism is the door through, and then they really show you who and what they are. That's how I'm not lying to you. I'm literally telling you what history. It's not my opinion. These aren't my rules. It's what history has shown us again and again and again. So you're going to either be under dictatorship by radical centrism. Some of this stuff is mind-blowing to some people. I know, it's like, wait, what? Centrism can't be evil in any way, shape, or form. Liberalism can't be evil in any way, shape, or form. We're either going to be governed by radical centrism, or we're going to be governed by a Marxist, or a communist, or a socialist. So that's your middle and your left areas, which then leaves two areas on the right. One is our area, the blue-blooded, socially conservative, Christian nationalist area. And then further to the right, you've obviously got a plethora of wickedness and nonsense, which I don't subscribe to, as you all know well and truly. And those people that sit on that end of the spectrum enjoy gunning for people like you and I, because they see us as traitors, because we're on the right, so therefore we should be like them, but we're just not psychotic or irretrievably stupid, or clinically insane, for example. So I think that's interesting, guys. You're either run by a Marxist or a socialist or a radical centrist or something really dangerous on the far right. Again, true, but we've never had this bit. I don't believe we've ever been governed by socially conservative in terms of the ideology and the outcomes and the benefits and the consequences to a society. I don't think we've had it yet. I really don't. And I think you guys know that to be true as well. Police make 30 arrests a day for going into the point, guys, about linking this back somehow to Starmer and the dissection of him as a man in power. Banning speakers from UTK. I mean, guys, like that's not the last nail in the coffin, right? The last nail in the coffin was like 100 nails ago. Police are making 30 arrests a day for online offensive messages. I think that you guys are all aware, as I am. There's a post and a video that's gone viral for quite a few years now that the UK is like the top country for arrests above Russia, or like Russia's way beneath. Anyway, there's so many numbers and stats when you work in my business that you have to remember, but I don't know what I think it's something like they do it by numbers, right? Not percentages. So it's something like 2,500. Someone get on Google and fact check that for me. But in 1 year, wasn't it like 2,500 arrests? And it's always done by arrest because it's an absolute load of nonsense. So you do hear about punishment and potentially prison time, but it's more the arrest factor, and it's like a non-crime hate crime. But I think that's changed as well recently as well. So there you go. Moving on, online safety bill, massive discussion in the UK. Labour set out that they were going to protect children from harmful content, the online safety bill. Now, this with Conservatives, this is met 50% don't want anything to do with this because they know that it's just a further clampdown, further restrictions, further attack, etc. And the other half say, no, this absolutely needs to be dealt with. Again, very problematic for me personally in terms of online protection, banning porn. So you can't get there unless you're over 18. I'm banning porn in general, but again, to protect in terms of children, 100%, absolutely. We need this. I don't care what other compromises have to be made in what other areas. Cyberbullying, kids offing themselves because they've got access to these devices, which kind of brings us back to parental responsibility and why have they got a phone and how can they? Well, if you get them the phone, then they can't. It comes with all the apps and you can't control it, and then just so again, we're either conservative or we're not. Conservatives want the government to essentially make sure that the economy doesn't crash or do anything stupid, give or take an inch. We're massively for nationalization and having in a lot of regards, but our bag is culture. Not every conservative is Christian, but all Christians are conservative. So our bag is always going to be culture. The economy ebbs and flows, ups and downs, highs and lows. But generally speaking, we'll always find a way to barter. We'll always find a way to make ends meet, etc. Our bag is culture. So we want in the age of digital, we want our children protected. And again, it's no good to say, well, my kids are completely protected, but what about this guy over here? I mean, maybe they're from different demographics, for example. It's the job of the state to look after the citizens. So they failed miserably in that. Like Jess Phillips resigned over this. What was she? The Minister of Women's. It's like a really long title, like Women's Safety, Women's Health, Women's Child, Girls Safety, etc. She resigned over this. Again, hugely problematic. again, no real advances have been made there. So it's an important point. Starmer met Trump in the White House on free speech. This is painful now. He said he would protect free speech jealously and fiercely. And we've had free speech, quote unquote, for a very, very long time in the United Kingdom, and it will last for a very, very long time. And I'm reminded to think about Lucy Connolly, Lucy Connolly and Peter Lynch. The free speech. In fact, we probably need a whole segment just on the free speech stuff. The free speech stuff is so. I've always said, I'm on record as saying that it's a shitty campaign. It is because you either have free speech or you don't. You either have it or you don't. We don't have it in the UK. We do not have it because free speech means it's free. That goes for all of it. That's it. So you've got, how do I even start to address this? Peter Lynch should never, God rest his soul, should never have been in prison. Lucy Connolly is probably the most prolific example. Again, bad taste, what she said, silly. Maybe she'd had a few glasses of wine. Something happens when the sun goes down, whatever, etc. Start chilling out, a few glasses of wine. Telephone tough guy, keyboard warrior, etc. Anyway, she shouldn't have gone to prison. She shouldn't have gone to prison. She shouldn't have got a knock at the door. She shouldn't have been arrested. The worst, if I'd heard that the police had gone round to her door and spoken to her, but not arrested her, I'd have been like, wait, what? But okay, we'll say no more about it. We're all fair-minded people, but even an arrest, I'd be like, wait, what? Let's say they'd arrested her and given her a right going over and really scared her, but they were always going to let her go. I'd be like, excuse me, what? But what did she get? 18 months? Didn't she do like 9 or 10 months in prison? Which is no joke. God forbid. It's no joke. So we got Starmer lying to Trump's face and basically like he's the bastion of freedom, of free speech and democracy. As he puts in all of his speeches, he'll say free speech as an expression and also liberal secular democracy or whatever. Again, these parroted talking points or sound bites, should I say. And then we look at the treatment of Lucy, of Peter, the persecution of Tommy Robinson, the banning of the conservative speakers. And what's wrong with that? Conservative speech. And let's not forget, before we move on, let's not forget, someone's actually found the numbers. What did I say? 2,500, 12,000. Thank you for doing that, guys. Always jump in on that one for facts. So yeah, wrapping up on the free speech stuff, guys. So Starmer's a liar. Starmer's a liar and a deceiver, but we already know that, and that's kind of the thrust of tonight's episode. We've been living under authoritarian. Britain economically has been a socialist state for 3-4 decades, easily, surveillance alone. But culturally, we've had to address, what does it mean? State control, that right, left, what does it mean? And that's where the free speech stuff and where I earned my stripes with Turning Point was so valuable and so important. Because if you are, we've had to look at what it is to be free. And this is to exclude religion from this bit now as well, which is problematic because we learn a lot about freedom through restraint, through rules, through discipline, through boundaries, through denial. And anyway, but that's a huge, great big point. But in charity, alms giving, but in terms of learning what it is to be a free country, we go right back to the 101s in dissecting it, which is free speech. And we know that Starmer is a liar and a deceiver. And we also know that he is absolutely for free speech if you're in his camp. Right. So that's now into the realms of assessing Starmer as a dictator. But if you're a dictator, whether you're Hussein, Assad, Mao, Stalin, Lenin, Mussolini, Pablo Escobar, like just take a cross section right there. There's always an ideology. There's always like terrorism. It's always ideologically driven. It's the difference between the lone gunman the isolated incident and the terrorist ideology that backs it up. I'll move on, guys, because I've spent a long time talking about freedom of speech and looking at Starmer and his performance over the last couple of years. Two-tier policing and justice. This is just now off the top of the head, guys. Some notes I've made. The riot gear at patriotic demos. The harsher, forceful, more harsher, forceful policing, specifically with patriots and not with your stand up to racisms ever, and your unite against fascisms and your socialist, frustratingly, your socialist worker party outfits. With Antifa, yeah, they know to bark really loud because Antifa is just filled with school children who have nothing inside them, no fight whatsoever. So the police know to bark really loudly, and then they'll pretty much, the Antifa play group, they'll pretty much do the Just Stop Oil stunt, which is to fall to their knees kind of thing. They know that the batons won't really swipe them, and the police know that as well. Although it wouldn't, as we always say, get the batons out, it wouldn't hurt to smash them up a little bit, teach them a little bit about respect. But yeah, it's, again, police rioting training. Police riot training showed at St. George's, the protester who was wearing the St. George's Day T-shirt. We've seen multiple examples where patriots, could be St. George's Day, could be any other UTK related, could be anything. Summer, was that summer last year? No, it wasn't. I think it was summer 24 when we all got penned in Whitehall outside Downing Street. Conspiracy theories were running amok there with regards to police informers and state assets, which I always find is a very fun conversation when you hear what people have to say about who instigates these things and the dissection that goes on in the videos, etc. And we don't sometimes we know, we don't always know. UKIP Leeds demo chant calling for the assassin, the UKIP demo that was just had in Leeds, the chant that was led by Socialist Worker Party goons, the assassination of patriots like Charlie Kirk, and the police just stand by. So I first noticed it at Piccadilly Gardens in I want to say April of last year, and it's the chant by the left, again the amalgamation of stand up to racism, Socialist Worker Party, unite against fascism, and all the different unison and the trade union groups. And it's like, do yourself a favor, unalive yourself like your leader, or like Hitler. I forget how they rhyme. I don't know. It's just a lot of noise when they do it. And then I was like, what do you unalive? And apparently this is a term now that the kiddies are using. The Zeds, the alphas are using. Unalive yourself, kill yourself. Kill yourself like Adolf Hitler. Follow your leader. Kill yourself like Adolf. Yeah, all this kind. So kill yourself. Okay, fine. But we're free speech, right? See, the left and the proponents of free speech know this, right? So that's fair game, right? And then using the example of Leeds, where they said, you guys have all seen it. I don't know how viral it went, but they're telling me it's called getting Charlie Kirk, God rest his soul, getting Charlie Kirked. And I've had it also at Turning Point stands as well, where the kiddies, the little Antifa, the little lefties, they'll kind of be like 2 meters away from me, and they'll say things like, are you worried you'll get Charlie Kirked, and all this other stuff. And then also there's that goon, what's his face, from the Oxford Union as well. Didn't he get into trouble? I forget his name. Anyway, he tweeted, didn't he? They finally got him. They got Charlie Kirk, and then let's effing go. And he got into a lot of trouble about that as well. So in terms of the two-tier policing and justice, you've either got free speech. Again, it's such a simple campaign. You've either got it or you don't. Then we're into the realms of consequences of freedom of speech. So there should 100% be consequences for freedom of speech. If you do anything racially aggravated, you're going to make things in a fight, you're going to make things a lot worse. If you speak disrespectfully about someone's mother or their religion, you could potentially be on the receiving end of being taught some manners, for example. Then there's varying degrees of how far you can go. So it's a really simple, and it takes 5 seconds. Speech is either free and absolute, or it is not. And yes, the point after that, never forget, yes, there must be consequences for freedom of speech. There must be. If somebody comes up to me and says various things which I find completely unacceptable. I have a variety of different methods and techniques that I can use against that individual. I can walk away. I can be silent. I can argue with them. I can correct them. There's a lot of things like I could potentially intimidate them or threaten them, for example. I've got a lot of things I can do. But then again, that's down to each and every man. So you can't say that there's a consequence-free environment for freedom of speech. Where we come down to is the two-tier policing and the two-tier justice. You can't have it all for this one side and completely against this side, because what you're doing then is you're saying to this side, I don't see you, I don't value you, and I don't care about you. So you can say whatever you want pretty much on this side, as long as it's progressive, as long as it's in line with the ideology that I adhere to, that I foster. Again, I'm talking about Starmer now. But if you say anything over there that's against me, if you say anything that's against my ideology, and this is the crux now, if you say anything that could derail me or produce some sort of uprising against me, we're no longer dealing with a democratic free state with a head of state that's voted in democratically. We're now dealing with the continual importing of radicals on the left who use liberalism, freedom, rights, choice, their campaigns. Starmer as a lawyer, there's lots of different examples of all these different people and their campaigns, but it's always going to be freedom, rights, and choice, which is your classic liberal camp. But they've actually got that's the liberal mask. Then the mask comes off and they're a full-blown Marxist. And we're seeing this, or a radical centrist. And we're seeing this time and time again. So Starmer, in terms of free and fair policing and justice, we do not see the clampdown on Just Stop Oil that we needed to see, and the prescription of as a domestic terrorist organization. We do not see Starmer clamping down on Antifa and ensuring they are prescribed as a domestic terrorist organization. So that comes up. 99% of Antifa are white, liberal, middle class kids. So let's see that on the prescribed terrorist list amongst all of the Islamist terrorist organizations. If you guys look at the 80 or so prescribed terrorist groups, it is, as you all know, right? It's 57 of the 80. It's 70% are Islamist terrorist organizations. It's terrifying. But let's put Antifa in there as well, right? We don't see that. After Southport, Keir Starmer couldn't wait to take the opportunity, which the right, to be fair, gave them, but the right gave him the opportunity because we were so outraged and so upset and so disgusted because of the nature of the Ruda Cabanas and their being here legally, which brings us back to the issue of legal immigration. And he couldn't wait, again, going through these items one at a time, to basically condemn concerned citizens, mothers and fathers, patriots, as far right. He couldn't wait to condemn us as being far right. So Just Stop Oil is a good example. Antifa is a good example. And the condemnation, with every chance Keir can piggyback off of an atrocity to not face and deal and most importantly, name the issue, because you can't solve it if you can't see it, if you can't name it, it has to be something, but to condemn hardworking, tax-paying, law-abiding citizens. And then, of course, you've got the issue of incredibly harsh policing and the riot gear that always comes out. And you've got 4 Saturday rather than the 1,000 police, and the constant the previous UTK was 1,000. Apparently, that was the numbers, 1,000 cops. Now it's 4,000. And then, of course, last but not least, you've got the never-ending labeling of the patriotic, socially conservative right by Starmer as being far right. Absolute worst move you can do is to label these people over here as extremists when all they've got is genuine concerns over the safety and well-being of their daughters and wives, of British women and young girls on the streets of Britain. So two-tier policing and justice. You could argue this is all a hangover from the laws that were brought in by the Conservatives, guys. So I can't let the blues off there. Crimes committed by illegal immigrants. Hadush Kabatu, you guys will remember. convicted of sexual assault against a teenage girl and woman. He was wrongly released from prison and briefly went on the run before being rearrested. Why? How did that happen? Why is he still here? Why wasn't he deported? Ibrahim Al-Shaf and Abdullah Ahmadi found guilty of repeatedly raping a woman on Brighton Beach. A third man filmed the rape. This is just recently, guys, from October 2025. Karim Al-Danasut was trying to escape the death penalty in his native country when he crossed the channel in a small boat. My work with my team has uncovered the illegals. They're all fighting age men coming from Islamic State, and they're all coming to Britain to build a new life. But we don't know who's a rapist and who's a murderer, and we don't know what intention that they've got. Deng Majek stabbed Rhiannon White, God rest her soul, 23 times with a screwdriver in her head, obviously killing her. Safi Dawood stabbed and murdered Wayne Broadhurst. So we could go back to Tory government and all of the failings there to address, to name the problem and then address the problem. So I can't let former blue leaders and the Conservative government off the fact that you have between legal immigration and illegal immigration and Islamist terror. You have a smoking gun there, not to mention the MI5 terrorist watch list, not to mention the prescribed terrorist list. You have got a major problem there that can be solved via mass deportations, remigration. Enough's enough. We can't take the risk. You're going home. And again, I could go, you guys for nearly 2 years have been hearing about this, right? It was my flagship policy under my leadership with UKIP that said first mainstream political party to say this: mass deportations and a list of who, remigration and then a list of who. That was my that's all UKIP. That's all under my leadership, guys. Undeniable. So two-tier policing and justice. All that's done is caused so much hatred and vitriol and anger amongst half. Again, I always use that expression about Brexit and how many people are actually talking about here on the Conservative side versus the progressive side. It's at least half the country. You're not talking about the IRA, like a little splinter group of terror, lethal, deadly, monstrous people over here that sort of contain, but not. You're talking about half the nation, which brings us on to talk more about the ability for us to strike and to be more activist based and what the left do as well. But that, again, different segment. And also can't do that unless you're unified against single unit point of command on the right. So two-tier policing and justice, labeling people as far right, crimes committed by illegal immigrants. We mentioned Wayne Broadhurst, mentioned Rhiannon White. They're not all the crimes that are by illegals, but if you came here in a boat and then you've raped or murdered, that is it. Close the borders and get to work immediately at solving the problem. But again, linking these points, the people, the lobby groups, the taxpayers, the activists that call for that are then called far right and demonized, which is you're just now Starmer's into the realms of just building up generational curses where our sons and their sons will never forget how we were treated. And then tie that into Lucy Connolly and Peter Lynch, God rest his soul. Again, I mentioned restrictions on freedom of speech. Two left, failure to tackle the grooming gangs, predominantly committed by Pakistani men. As we all know, Labour reluctant to use the word Pakistani, again, dragging their heels, inquiry after inquiry, no mass deportations, no designated death penalty campaign or a minimum referendum on the death penalty. And here's the point, and this is where, guys, I can get really cute with you now. Yeah, there's other parties emerging on the right, but for the last 2 years, I've been there saying, and for the last year and a half since being in office, I've been there saying, it's really simple, guys. Here's the mass deportations list. Here's the remigration list. Here's the cultural list, i.e. what do we mean by who stays and who goes. And also 90 days of being in office, if God wills it, referendum on the death penalty. It's not hard to push these things through and to get on with it. Stop condemning. Again, have I ever once said that I would have in the context of being PM, that I would have an issue with your ordinary progressive mum or your ordinary left-leaning liberal progressive dad? No, absolutely not. And that's the difference, right? These people would be allowed to speak. They'd be allowed to get on with it. Of course they would. But the direction of travel, under my leadership, when it happens, and it will happen, it's not a question of if, but when, next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, everyone that's got behind it, by the time we actually secure that 30 million vote, that'll be nice, wouldn't it? Imagine that as a mandate, guys. Yeah, imagine that. This is really powerful stuff now, right? And you're talking about setting the scene for future generations, not just one electoral life cycle, but for our grandchildren's children, right? That's why I fight. That's why the team that I'm so blessed to be around, that's why we fight. You're setting the direction of travel under a Christian conservative banner, but you don't pick fights with left-leaning people. You don't pick fights with over 18-year-olds who have decided to chop their bits off, who have got mental health problems. You help them. You say that you need help, and here's the pathway for that. So again, failure to tackle the grooming gangs. Again, we all know the names and the terms you need to put on this, and we also know the solution. You can't unrape someone, but what you now need to do is focus all your efforts, as a UKIP government under my leadership would do, on saying, right, who was involved in this? Where are they from? You're gone, mate. Yeah, some of it is death penalty, 100%. Some of it is, and these words are parroted by politicians and new parties. It's incredibly frustrating, guys. That death penalty, mass deportations, remigration. Now we're into the realms of cover up as well. Wait, hang on a minute. They'll say, I didn't rape anyone. No, but you covered the crime up. Rotting in prison forever for covering up these sorts of crimes involved pertaining to the rape genocide of Britain. Those were UKIP's policies under my leadership. Don't ever forget it, patriots. Reporting on offender ethnicity and race, still vague, inconsistent. Again, a real reluctancy by the establishment to do the business and ensure that our girls get justice. Name the problem. Don't care. Skin color, religion, demographics. Don't care. Don't care. Name it and deal with it. Initially, of course, there was a vote against the inquiry. Massively important point, the reporting on offender ethnicity and race, still inconsistent, vague, and also avoidant of the issue. Whereas I'd be at a lectern within my first 90 days, pretty much giving a speech every day. Once I've dealt with the business as usual in my cabinet, there's an update, because Britain's broken, right? So there's the taxpayers, the voters, you're my stakeholders, right? You're my customers. You run me, I serve you. Public servant, the clues in the title. There'd be a speech pretty much every day giving you an update with regards to where we're headed. And again, that's not sustainable long term, but for the first 90 days, why not? Many sentencing remarks from judges outline the brutal and torturous nature of the grooming gangs. One example, I'm not going to read this out. Anyway, we're all aware of the depravity, the level of depravity and of wickedness and of evil that was bestowed upon predominantly targeted British white native girls, which adds to the severity of the crime in terms of aggravating versus mitigating. It's as aggravating as it gets, because you're into the realm now of genocide. You're into the realm now of terrorism. You're into the realm now of targeting because of their skin color, their demographic, for example, which is a whole new area of criminality and evil, frankly. So that was to do with failure to tackle the grooming gangs. And again, I'm involving a lot of the rhetoric that's used that is avoidant to tackle the issue, whilst condemning patriots. That's your two-tier justice, and two-tier justice and the attack on freedom of speech where the right's concerned. I said there was two, there aren't there. That was the third. There are two left. I'm going to do these ones quickly, guys. Southport massacre. So I'm going to do this quickly. Starmer was at Southport for 19 seconds. Apparently, I had to do some research on this and get it confirmed. But apparently, he was there for 19 seconds. The Cobra meeting was called after the riots. The Cobra meeting wasn't called. Now imagine, let's do this quickly, shall we? Like, okay, so Southport happened, and you've just become PM, and Southport's happened. you have a duty, but you've got this situation, you can't bring them back. So Cobra meetings get called, right? For those of you who know how this works, that Cobra meeting didn't get called until after, I'm hesitant to use the word riots, didn't get called until after the riots. But that crime, why Axel's father was here, the link, as we all now know, with regards to whatever he was or wasn't up to in Rwanda, the link, why was he here? It's got nothing to do with skin color. Nothing to do with skin color. Why is this guy here? Refugee, right? Axel, 16 years old at the time, is that right? 16, going on 17. Then he's turned 18 recently. No 16-year-old boy who, you have to forgive me, Patriots, because I've done this so much and it's you don't want to hear it, but no 16-year-old boy plans something like that and doesn't tell his mates, write it in a journal, tell his mum, dad, just, I don't know. The insinuation is that this kid was trotting downstairs for his beans on toast at 5:30, like a normal school kid. I suppose he's a bit older, so it wasn't doing that. But that's the insinuation. This kid was living a normal life. The teachers, the care workers, the people that I was going to say, Ofsted, but the people that have their eye on these things, the government, anti-terror task force, prevent, the kid in the school playground. The insinuation is that this monster was planning this. That he never wrote anything down. His parents never checked any journals. This guy had it all in his head, never repeated a word to anyone, never confessed, never made a joke about anything. There were no clues whatsoever to this 16-year-old, this monster. Now, I'm going to compare that with other crimes, just to myself now. And I think, do you know what? I'm not sure you could have stopped it. There are other crimes that have happened. I'm not sure you could have stopped it. Opportunistic, lone wolf. You can't survey the state. And we go again, we don't want that either. But this wasn't that, was it? The insinuation is that this kid, this monster, this guy, he went and told no one, nothing, and then just went and did it. No one could perform that action sane or sober or straight within themselves, which means they would be showcasing behaviors. They would be showcasing mindsets, using words, certain things, dealer's choice. Someone knew something, and all it took was for one person to say something to someone else, and now you're in with a shot of stopping it from happening. It's not Minority Report stuff. It's the same with Ariana Grande, May 17. This story will just haunt us forever. How many times has it happened whereby someone could have done something, but they didn't because they thought, every time you get on a train, see it, say it, report it, see it, say it, sort it. 9/11, security at airports, whatever. Change comes about through us. Ariana Grande, we know the story now. There are legitimate, clarified, justified reports, and it's not the first time or the last time this is going to happen. The environment has been created whereby people potentially who were there at that right time, that right space, we've got an environment now whereby they're just not going to say something. They're not going to report it. They're not going to say it because of the consequences on them. But that's created a society, a culture that's rotten to its core. That's not love thy neighbor. And ironically, the left use that quote from Matthew, chapter and verse, against us as God's greatest second commandment, and thanks be to God, but in a bastardized fashion against us. Yeah, the 19 seconds that he was in Southport for to lay a wreath. The Cobra meeting, Rudy Cabana's home. Police found evidence of intentions to carry out mass killing. Files showing an extensive obsession with violence and genocide. Al Qaeda training manual detailing instructions on how to target the head and the neck specifically, which was done to the children. And in the case of one of the girls, the pathologist report shows that he's clearly tried to decapitate one of the girls. So he's learned it from somewhere. He's got all of this material, all of this evidence. Mum and dad didn't know. Mum's never cleaning the room. Dad's never around. It's just such BS. Someone knew. Question becomes, why wasn't it reported? The residue, which was identified to experts, which could of ricin, which was discovered, which could produce over 1,000 lethal doses. Rudy Cabana was described in the press as a quiet Welsh choir boy, and showed a photo of him as a 10-year-old boy with his school blazer and his tie on. Again, surrounded in and engulfed in absolute wickedness, treachery, lies, and deceit, patriots. So again, for fairness, anyone could pull me up right now and say, well, hang on a minute, this is not all Kears. You know, there's some hangover, again, that classic, there's some hangover from the Conservatives, etc., and laws that they put in place, and my hands were tied, this, that, and the other, etc., etc. No, when you become PM of this great, wonderful, amazing, beautiful nation, when you become PM of this country, you stand for truth. You stand for justice. You stand to fight for what is right. Again, I said that there were two, and I meant it this time. There was one remaining one, patriots. Record levels of illegal immigration. Again, you're all familiar with this. And the numbers stuff, guys, it really is just, it's just, you know, how many, I've said this last week in my show, and also I've said it elsewhere as well. How many noughts do you need at the end of it for it to become a problem? How many rapes does it become a problem at? You know, the 1960s, the Second World War onwards, the 1960s onward, Windrush, the Blair years, 97, the Boris wave. You've got like 4 markers there, haven't you? Where you can, a left winger and a right winger could debate over all of that, right? And actually probably have quite a fruitful conversation about it. Those are your 4 markers. But at what point do you go, that number of million, that number of death, that number of rape? At what point does that happen? So the numbers, the numbers model, it becomes useless. Yeah, we need to know the statistics. We need to know what we need to know what numbers are in terms of spend, taxpayer spend. Of course we do. But we've had all those. The big ones are, what are we spending on people who are here, who are foreigners? What are we spending on them? 21 billion out of work migrants, foreigners. Then there's the bill from the 12,000 foreigners in our jails, £50,000 a year times 11,000 inmates. So you've got your 21 billion on out of work migrants. We spend 4 billion a year on MI5. That and it's 70% on the prescribed terrorist organizations, which is MI5's department is Islamist terror. So again, you could start to guys, it's in the billions. I've never been a fan of the numbers. I'll give you another number. Deals with France. I think it's like 662 million is the latest deal. So like we've done hundreds of millions to France, pointless. What we spend on recon, surveillance, and task force, anti-terror, etc. Again, unnecessary. Hosting them in our prisons, again, unnecessary. Out of work migrants. If you're out of work and you're a migrant, what are you doing here? Why are you here? I've been on holiday before. I've been a tourist before, and I've never taken from the state. I've paid my way with a budget, and then I've come home and I've carried on paying tax. I wouldn't dream of going to a country and then be expected to get handouts. I'd expect to work and create and build for myself. The whole thing's absolute nonsense that you can be here as a foreigner and get paid for. It's absolute nonsense. Now, those are just 3 or 4 areas, guys. 2 billion on the hotels. 8 million quid a day, 2 billion on the hotels. Do you see how we're already into the sort of 28, 29, 30 billion mark with regards to migrants? Some people use the word illegals, legals, foreigners, migrants, people who aren't British, who weren't born here. Does that make sense, guys? You're already at the 30 billion mark. What is it? 1.2 million in the last 10 years and 10 million since the Blair 97. Again, what difference does it make? If even one rape, or I'm on record as saying, if even one rape or one murder happens, we have to review how we view immigration. Of course, absolutely. Because we can have children, right? The Brits can have babies. We can build our own nation. Again, first mainstream political party to announce these essentially what is over an hour long of just pure policy, guys. But in the context of understanding Starmer, the man, as we approach the 2-year mark, record levels of illegal immigration. Again, hangover from the Blues, from the Conservative, sure, but record levels. 70, again, the details, 70,000. I do know these numbers, but they come back. 70,000 in the last year, 50,000 the year before that. Again, but they don't even know the numbers, do they? So what difference does it make? Mass deportations, close the borders, deploy the military. 200,000 small boat migrants since 2018. Well, that's a different number from 2017, which is a different number from 2019. Again, we need to be able to, you know, from 97 is a good marker, and from the Boris wave is a good marker. 200,000 small boat crossings. 200,000. It's literally cultural suicide. 7,612 have been removed from the UK. 4% of new arrivals. Shabana Mahmood announced an offering to up to £40,000 to rejected asylum seeker families to voluntarily leave the UK. I haven't got an opinion about that, because that is one technique to get people to leave, is you pay them to go, etc., in a humane way. Yeah, the France deals, 662 million. Guys, numbers. We all know what's what. Right. Let's wrap up, guys. Over an hour. A massive thank you for being with me. This, like, as I said at the start, horrific topics tonight. But this proves it's not vitriolic. It's not anger. All that clouds the judgment. This is an assassination of the truth. That's what this is. It's a dissection of what's really gone on in 6 segments with regards to Starmer. And there's loads more, by the way. Shaking hands with the new leader of Syria, who's a guy who's I always forget his name, but he's got the 2 heads in his hand. The terrorist, the Al Qaeda, the ISIL guy, right? And he's here shaking hands with and Alistair Campbell met him with what's his face as well to do an interview as well. Like, we're all friends now, you know, like, you're one of the good guys. Anyway, right, solutions in under a minute. The only way that Boris Johnson got to power was by returning a majority through party politics. The only way that John Major got to power was by returning a majority in party politics. The only way that Keir Starmer got to power was by returning a majority through party politics. Returning a majority through party politics. How do you create a majority through party politics? You have an army that's of patriots, disciples, citizens, taxpayers, whatever you want to, voters. They're all registered to vote. They're all registered to vote. They've all understood the mission and they go vote. So you're thinking, right, okay, I get it. So you're going to evangelize everyone to what exactly? Become registered to vote, correct? So every time you're backing me as your leader and you're supporting me and you've understood the mission, you're evangelizing your brothers and sisters to get registered to vote. All the aforementioned. In closing, you then need someone to vote for. We have never had a single unit point of command on the socially conservative Christian nationalist right. You have that under my leadership. You don't have it under Nigel. Again, that's not a slur. You don't have it under Nigel. On the socially conservative right, you now have a crowded space of individuals. We all know who was there first. We all know who said it first, but that's not important right now. You have a crowded space of individuals on the right. It doesn't change the fact that you're going to have to select your leader. Compromises can be made, unity can be formed. We're working on that. But you must be registered to vote, understood the mission, evangelize your brothers and sisters, family, brothers and sisters in the biblical sense, your fellow citizens, registered to vote, choose your leader, back that leader, become a member of whichever party. You can be member of multiple parties. We're way past that now, guys. Back your leader, choose your leader, and back that person. And we will, and I will continue to fight for unity on the right, because I think the way that Nigel's going is a very central liberal path. And we don't want that. We want a Christian nationalist, socially conservative, right-wing trajectory, outcome, government. Thank you so much for being with me tonight, Patriots. It's been an honor, as always. Tomorrow, it is the Ascension, the feast day that we celebrate, and we are in church tomorrow for the Ascension as we observe the Ascension of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Tomorrow, there will be a mass in your local church tomorrow morning or tomorrow evening. Please, please, please trust me when I say this. If we want our country back, we have to turn back to God and on bended knee ask for the grace, the courage, the strength, the skills, you name it, everything that's going to be given, the resolve, the endurance, the stamina. We're going to need it, and it's the only way. It's only from God that will cut it. I'm asking you to trust me on that, guys. So on bended knee, devout Christian, practicing supporter of the faith, whatever, disciple. I'm never gonna stop telling you guys the truth there. I think we have to turn back to God. God grants us the grace, then we might get what we want. And we must reinstate Christianity back into the heart of government. We've fallen so far from grace. So please get into church tomorrow. It's a holy day of obligation. Please get into church. Thank you so much for being with me tonight. Go to ukip.org, sign up, become a member right now. It takes no time at all. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and the Holy Spirit. God bless. I see you next Wednesday, guys.